Hello and welcome to another Cliff Reviews Art House. This time I'm reviewing the 1973 film The Day of the Jackal, directed by Fred Zinnemann. So on TV at the moment, we've got this TV series of The Day of the Jackal, a new adaptation of it, starring Eddie Redmayne. I've watched a couple of the episodes so far, and this prompted me to go back and watch the original 1973 film, Day of the Jackal. It also prompted me to watch, which I'd never seen before, the 1979 version of The Day of the Jackal, directed by Michael Caron Jones, starring Bruce Willis and Richard Gere. And this is primarily a review of the original Day of the Jackal film, but I will compare and contrast it a little bit at the end of this review with those two subsequent adaptations. So, the 1973 version of this story is one of those films where you would say they just don't make them like this anymore. It's got that beautiful 1970s aesthetic. Now, I saw this on TV, I think, as a teenager. I don't think I saw it at the cinema. And so for me, there is a nostalgia about this that perhaps other people wouldn't enjoy it as much as I did. But for me, it's really one of those great 1970s movies. But beyond the nostalgia for me, I do think that this is great movie making. Although this is a thriller, there's a real spareness to it. It's a really minimalist film. It is a thriller, and in some ways there is some action in it, but the pacing is very slow. The tension is maintained and slowly built up. There's hardly any music in this film, which normally a thriller of this type would have all kinds of cues for the tension and building up. But this has virtually no music. I can remember one scene where there was almost one note of music just to establish a mood about the scene. So we really focus on the diegetic sounds, the sounds just naturally within the film. As I say, there's just no cues to build up any tension or emotions. And, this could be boring. It could not work, but boy, does it work in this film. I absolutely loved it. I just found it so compelling. Small sounds really register. It's got a fantastic soundscape. I guess some people might find it a little bit monotonous. It's definitely not a high octane thriller, but for me, I just found it absolutely mesmerizing. There's one extraordinary scene about half an hour into the film where the Jackal is scoping out potential locations from which to make his assassination attempt. I think it lasts about 4 minutes, this sequence, and it's just him kind of looking at different locations. We've got very hard cuts between lots of different shots. The cinematography is amazing. There's long shots from above. There's kind of panning shots looking up at the buildings. That we zoom in and zoom out of details. There's no dialogue at all. As I say, it's just hard cuts between these different environments. 1 second we're looking at the street with all the street noises and the traffic, and then we're at the Arc de Triomphe and there's a screeching brake in the background. Then there's a hard cut to where we're inside a church and it's silent apart from just the odd echo of footsteps. So as these shots jump around, for me, something happens kind of sonically that it just becomes an incredible kind of sound experience. We hear these little background conversations. When we get the hard cut to the quieter scene, we can literally hear the grit crunching under his shoes when he's walking. For me, this sound design is just exquisite. The version that I watched it in was on a streaming service, and the sound, I'm not even sure it was stereo sound, it may be mono. It would be amazing to hear this sound design in surround sound, but it was still good even if it was in mono. The climax scene as well is amazing, where the assassination attempt, it's just, in a way, it's done in a very similar way. It's almost like a news report just showing us. It's like one of those news reports where you don't have any commentary, where it just is showing us clips. We see marksmen on the roof, we see police preparing, we see the police marching on the streets, we see a band practicing. It is like news footage, it's almost like documentary. A lot of them are like mundane shots, and there's no, as I say, there's no music apart from the music of the band practicing. It's just incredible for me how this works. I think it's just so kind of mesmerizing. The whole film is kind of a study. It's so meticulous about the kind of procedure in, number one, the assassination plan, but number two, the police investigation of trying to catch the Jackal. Edward Fox is the perfect Jackal. He's cold, he's ruthless, but there's an ambiguity about him. We don't hate him. We're clear that he is a kind of ruthless killer, but at times we're almost rooting for him. And I think this is really sophisticated storytelling. He's highly professional. I love how, when he's ordering the gun, both him and the guy he's ordering the gun from, there's kind of a pride in their work. It's almost mundane, as they discuss the mundane details. Of course, they're talking about killing people, this machine that can kill people. So again, there's this ambiguity, but we really can appreciate the kind of shared pride in being super professional about something. I loved that. The same with the lead detective, LaBelle. His kind of attention to detail. We follow his procedure. He's obsessive. He's kind of really intensive in his approach. And again, this level of professionalism, there's just something about it which registers with me. If I was to make one criticism of this film, it would be, and I guess this probably wouldn't be done like this today, but all the characters, all the actors seem to be mainly English, and they all have English accents. There's one or two that maybe are speaking with French accents, but we do have, English characters in this film, and we have French characters. And for many of them, there's just no difference in the accents that they speak. I think if this film was being made again today, it would have the French characters speaking French with subtitles on the screen. Or at least a compromise would be that all of the French characters, all of the police, had French accents, so there was more of this distinction. I just found it a little bit odd that some of the French police were speaking with almost Queen's English. That was strange for me. It's so I watched the 1979 film, and I've seen 2 episodes of the TV series, and I must say that neither of them are in the same league. Neither of them come anywhere close to doing justice to this story. The original 1973 film was a faithful adaptation of the Frederick Forsyth book. But the next two, the 1979 film and the new TV series, they're very different stories. So they're taking it in a new direction. The 79 film is a bit rubbish, really. It's got a great roster of actors: Richard Gere, Bruce Willis, Sidney Poitier, J.K. Simmons, even Jack Black's in it. It makes it very watchable, but it has a number of problems. The 2 biggest are that it's made with the standard of a TV movie. Watching it directly after watching the 1973 film, there is just no comparison at all in these films. It's entertaining enough, but it shouldn't even be discussed in the same breath. The second big problem I had with this film is that the Jackal just isn't as sophisticated a character. Bruce Willis, he's not bad as the Jackal, and there are things which there are nods to the first film, the way they do things in a similar way. But there's just no ambiguity in him. He's just a bad guy. And, I think that lacks something of the kind of subtleness and the nuance of the 1973 film. So I've only seen 2 episodes of the new TV series, but I think it does have give me a picture of what it's like. And I would say it's fairly standard fare in the wake of the Bourne Identity, Mission Impossible. It is watchable, but it's so different. It's just not it's not a work of art in any way. So overall, I think that the 1973, The Day of the Jackal, is a classic. It's a real testament to the artistry of, great 1970s filmmaking. The pacing of this film may be slow for some people, but I just thought it was meticulous, and I loved the minimal, really minimal use of music. This film had an incredible soundscape. I love the atmosphere overall of the film. It's understated, it's hypnotic, it's mesmerizing. Edward Fox's portrayal of the Jackal adds kind of layers of ambiguity, and it's fascinating. We're conflicted between our fascination with his professionalism and his cold-blooded, the fact that he's a cold-blooded murderer. The later adaptations, they're attempting to revive something of the essence of the original, but they fall far, far short of the profound craftsmanship and narrative depth of the 1973 version. It's such a timeless piece. It's subtle, it's procedural in a really interesting way. It's really compelling storytelling. I highly recommend this film. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.